Hi, everybody. My name is Andy Meadows. I'm the founder and managing director here at Blink. We're super excited today to have Amber Walls joining us from GS1 US. Amber, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Glad to be here. I'm Amber Walls, Senior Director of Global Standards at GS1 US. And for those that might not be familiar, GS1 is the organization that works globally to help develop standards for supply chain, much like the QR code in GS1 Digital Link we'll be talking about today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amber. Super excited to have you with us today. For today's agenda, we're going to start off by talking about the transition from 1D barcodes to the GS1 Digital Link, talk about the possibilities that it allows for organizations around the world to connect and engage with their consumers. We're going to talk about how to get started in that workflow, what the steps are, who the people are, the teams are, and the general workflows to get things rolling, and then talk about how Blink can help in this process. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask anytime during the chat. We'll also open up at the end to make sure we have some time to answer questions as well. All right, Amber, take it away.
All right. So lots of terms are happening in the wonderful world of 2D barcodes right now. And one that's popping up a lot, just in the Wall Street Journal, is Sunrise 2027. So we'll just start with what that is and why it is. So industry just needs more data. There's been all sorts of pressing use cases from all sectors of retail about getting the right information to the right place at the right time. And as a result of that need, there's been an established date to enable the ability to scan 2D barcodes at retail point of sale. When we're talking about Sunrise 2027, that's the US version, but it is truly a global ambition that by the end of the year 2027, all retailers will be able to scan and do the same type of functionality they get with a 1D barcode with a set of 2D barcodes we'll get into. So talking about the why on the next slide, there's all sorts of drivers here. Why does the barcode need to evolve and how will it? It's the 50th anniversary of the UPCA barcode this year. QR codes have actually been around for 30 years as of this year too. And these barcodes have evolved in the use cases as well. As we look at what's going on in industry and what is happening, there's just this need for transparency across the board, whether it's a regulatory compliance concern, transparency to consumers or business partners. More information is needed when and where it's needed. And there's less room for excuses now than you might have seen in the past. So there's this big piece as well as need to optimize the packaging space. There's more text that's needed. There's also the need to better meet adaptability requirements for things in different languages, larger fonts that you simply can't do on the packaging. When we talk about consumer engagement as well, having dynamic experiences and customizable things is such an important factor in a lot of marketing mixes, and barcodes can help with that. But there's been a little bit of a stop point up until now on really taking it to the next level. And looking at different point of sale applications, food safety, recalls, leveraging things like a batch lot number, or just even an expiration date for freshness management can add huge value, not just to consumers, but also for optimizing the supply chain. So there's this perfect storm of finding the solution that will help take the full retail market forward in meeting these needs in a more efficient and scaled way. So products in market are going to be getting, and actually have already gotten in many cases, QR codes leveraging the GS1 Digital Link standard we'll talk about more. The QR code is also going to be something that can be scanned at retail point of sale. So think about the end game where all your product would have to have on it from a barcode standpoint is one QR code. And that could be used for supply chain, price lookup, as well as the consumer and web experiences that you might be getting with a QR code today on pack. And then we also have a really interesting evolution with integration to other technologies. So in the apparel sector, we're already seeing them start out the gate with 2D plus RFID. That's being looked at in a lot of other sectors, as well as other technologies like integration with machine vision and AI applications. But that's getting a little bit ahead. Let's look at the next slide and kind of lay out how 2D really is different than the existing barcodes today. So 1D linear barcodes, those lines and spaces ones are great. They serve a lot of purposes and have served industry well for over 50 years. The problem with them is they only contain the product identifier, the global trade item number, UPCs, which you might refer to it as. So for companies that only need that, it's great. It'll still be around if they need it, but a lot of companies need more. And that's why more capabilities and more capable barcodes are being integrated into systems. So with 2D barcodes, these are the ones, there's a wide spectrum of 2D barcode types, and they're all essentially just light and dark spaces on a grid. These do require an image-based scanner. So if you have equipment in your ecosystem that's laser-based, they won't be able to read these. You'd actually have to update the hardware. Great news is studies conducted in 2018, 2019 show that the retail environment almost exclusively had image-based scanners as part of their natural upgrade cycle. And that's part of where the 2027 date came from, was around that hardware piece. Major benefit of these barcodes is they can hold significantly more data in a much smaller footprint. And barcodes like the QR code also have that web compatibility where we're all used to pointing our phone at a barcode, just our camera, and having an online experience. So there's also that benefit of consumers recognize this as something that they can interact with. And even if they don't scan it, you can build some trust by having it on your package. The other piece that we can't overlook is just the robustness of 2D barcodes like QR code. They have built-in error correction where the same information is redundantly encoded. It also puts it on a smaller footprint, meaning that some of the damage that might make your 1D barcode unable to be scanned, all right, you can move forward really nicely with a 2D barcode in those same type of situations. So we've talked, and I've mentioned Digital Link quite a few times. So a little bit of breakdown on what that is and why it's important. So you see QR codes all the time on products. Every type of product in the sun can have a QR code on it. If you go in a store and start looking, you'll quickly stop because they're everywhere, and that's for a good reason. What makes leveraging GS1 standards in these QR codes so important is it takes existing standards used in supply chain retail. The data elements like the UPC or G10, expiration date, batch lot number, and it puts those existing elements in a web compatible format. So what it does is with one barcode, you can do all of your supply chain things, as well as get the benefits of the QR codes you're getting today, and even take those a step further when you integrate those with things like serialization and more granular data that really unlocks those use cases. So GS1 Digital Link in these barcodes, it contains a URL just like the time you would type into your web browser. And that's what allows it to serve this dual purpose. Updated systems can parse out and use the data for supply chain, and then it's fully compatible with the web. And this really is being used for all sorts of product types. And so on the next slide, we have a fixed weight product example. With using GS1 Digital Link and GS1 standards, the minimum requirement is you at least have the G10 in the barcode. But when you begin to expand that to more data, you can do a lot more with it. So in this milk example, really good match to what we're seeing with real world products around the world. Beginning to include something like a batch lot number allows you to do more and capture more. You get more granular identification, so every product's not the same from a scanning standpoint. And you can map what's in this barcode to digital information, like where it came from, sourcing information. We see some really cool use cases in the fresh industry of here's the farm this product was produced at. And with batch lot numbers too, when you have that in your barcode, you can then do applications like recall happens. Okay. Only impacted batch lot codes will show something saying, hey, your product's not safe. Here is how you handle the recall, get a replacement product, and handle the PR aspects. Products that aren't part of that recall can take a user to a different experience that'll say, hey, your product is safe. It's great. Continue on. No worries. Because you have that in your barcode, it lets you do some really interesting things that vary on what your need's going to be. In addition to kind of the batch lot number example, we're seeing a lot of industry interest in things like a best before, an expiration date, to really make sure products are getting on shelf when they need to be, in terms of inventory rotation, as well as interesting things with dynamic price markdowns and some analytics that get coupled with knowing how close products are selling to those expiration dates. along with the fixed weight products, there's also variable measure products. So on the next slide, we have an example here with, I'm going to call that salmon. It looks very salmony to me, where you can have more data in there for this management. And with a lot of retailers, they're looking at their in-store label and produced products. Also with the Food Safety Modernization Act and FSMA 204, we see a lot of interest in not just the consumer each retail unit, but how might 2D barcodes work for case level and higher packaging. So with this, you have batch lot number, you have best before date, and in some cases, you might have variable measure attribution like the weight, price, or count of the product. And those continue to be things that are being explored, and the best way to navigate this, with the art of the possible being so vast when you have these data points and the web connectivity, where do you take it? What's your starting point? What's your crawl versus your run, and how do you get there is just a big thing with the amount of choices with these standards. So getting into really streamlining through a single barcode. Lots of reasons to want to do this, right? Nobody wants their packaging, whether it's a consumer unit or a case, to be cluttered with barcodes. There's cost associated with labeling and printing those. There's added complexity with every barcode you have. And from a scanning's perspective, it can get complicated with systems having to look at multiple barcodes, figure out which one it wants to use without causing delays. And with the scale of business, when you're talking in some facilities, millions of products being scanned in an automated scenario, fractions of a second count. And those are all things where having one barcode that can make good use of the space, simplify scanning processes where there's not having to be automation to determine what barcode to use. It all just makes it much, much simpler. So great examples here of what we're seeing being explored in market. You have the GS1 identification pieces for supply chain, for point of sale, point of care, product information, which could be really anything you need it to be. At the case level, we're hearing a lot about, hey, can we have safety sheets linked to, or maybe linked to something with our advanced ship notice, you can see what's in this container. Promotional videos, recycling information, the sky is the limit. And instead of having to do all of those with its own barcode or text that can't be automatically acted on, you can do that all through a QR code. The one other thing I want to really highlight here with that last bullet point, like different barcodes being managed, misalignment, there's also once you print something, with that text, what if it changes? That being printed is stuck on there. With a QR code, you can go in the back end and do things used every day with web technology and websites we navigate, where you can readily change it to a new page. You can add context. You can add a new language without changing how you've marked that package, which you just simply can't do once you put text on it. All right, so next slide here. So there's a lot of best practices with creating the data that goes into that QR code, so that GS1 Digital Link stream. So we have a lot of great materials around this from GS1, happy to share, and I think the links will be in this in this communication. But questions like, how is a consumer going to really trust this? How do I make sure that my company can maintain where this links to over time? And a great thing is just starting with your own brand's domain name. When someone scans that with their phone, they'll see a brand name they trust that matches the product, and it'll incentivize them and make them feel good about going to the next page. Also, using subdomains is a really common thing used with web traffic today to help navigate and do some of these sub pages. So if you have things more specific to a batch lot, a instance of a product with serialization, you can have these sub pages that can get much more specific and targeted without cluttering up your main domain. And if you have a webmaster and folks that do this and you're not familiar with these terms, they're the ones they work in every day. We've definitely found just getting to that right person in the organization makes this really simple for a lot of companies. There's also the use of redirection. So what's in the barcode and how that text looks isn't where it actually takes you. You'll click on the link and it'll then make something normally much larger in your web browser search bar. So taking what's in the barcode to something else is a key piece of, again, how you navigate the web today and how you can make sure you can change what the barcode's linking to without having to change the barcode. Also keep it short. You're using that redirect, so you can go to a much longer domain URL. And the smaller the link in the barcode, the smaller the barcode is. And everybody wants to save space, right? And then last but not least, include the data that supports your business processes. We get a lot of questions around, well, how many different data elements do I need? Which ones? It's really use just the set that needs to get you to your use case. If you don't need a serial number or country of origin, don't put it in there. You can have a lot of information about a product behind a serial number where you don't need it in the barcode. And that really just depends on what you're trying to enable. So that hits a lot of the key over pieces and the things with GS1 standards with it. So now let's get transitioned into possibilities of using GS1 Digital Link. And this has so many great use cases on here. And these are things that when I talk to brands and retailers from all around the world and different segments of retail, they all have their own flavors of these. One-on-one consumer connection looks very different based on your product type and your marketing goals. Coupons, discounts, promotions. You want people coming back and interacting with that QR code in your product, incentivize it. Nutrition information might not be the thing you keep clicking on. So what does your consumer, your shopper want to see? Could be a wide variety of these things. And having these dynamic experiences can allow for that over time as you better understand how these consumers are interacting with QR codes and what you want to serve up for them with the capabilities available. So with that, Andy, take it away and share some more about what you're hearing and seeing here.
Amber. One of the things that working through each of these different examples, one of the things that our customers have really discovered about this has to do with data privacy and how they build that relationship with their consumers and really obtaining that first party data. Everyone wants to connect to their customers in an easier, better, smoother fashion. And the GS1 Digital Link really makes that possible with each and every product, each and every purchase, every engagement. So by connecting those products with that GS1 Digital Link, you're able to better connect and capture that information with your customer. You can create that experience that really helps from the entire product lifecycle, that circularity of that product. From the very beginning of what is it like to purchase this product, looking at reviews, looking at information about the sourcing, as you mentioned earlier, around which farm did the product originate from, who's the person who picked the product, how is it packaged, what kind of packaging material is used. All those different components really help you tell that story about that product. That's ultimately what really does help with the engagement side of things, is telling that story. So using that QR code, that 2D code to be able to connect and tell that story is critical in that workflow. It also allows you to deliver that unlimited information to them that can change dynamically. So as you mentioned, as the product changes, the needs change of that product, as the circularity of that product evolves over time, maybe recycling laws have come into place or anything from a compliance standpoint, all those pieces allow you to tell that story in that entire consumer experience, in that journey that they have, for again, the full life cycle of that product. And ultimately, again, being able to create that relationship with the consumer where they can choose to opt in to what kind of information that they want to share with you and begin to build that relationship. We all know that the best links are personalized, they're one-to-one, and the ability to create that one-to-one relationship and be able to communicate in real time with that person is really paramount in that workflow and that experience. So I wanted to walk through a few other examples just to kind of paint a picture of what's possible, knowing that the possibilities are truly endless with the GS1 Digital Link. So here's an example where the digital link that is on a carton of eggs can show the sourcing information, nutrition information, all the details right there on the mobile device, being able to talk about from the sizing of the egg to which parts of the egg and the nutrition information around it, all the way down to the farm where it itself was sourced. So tremendous opportunity to, again, tell the story of that product in that moment. Taking this a step further, get to another example around optimization at the point of sale and in-store information as well. So in this example, we talk about how being able to put the GS1 Digital Link and update that information can eliminate or greatly reduce the time that a product is off the shelf when it's a refrigerated product. There's a certain guideline around how long it can be off the shelf and return. So if you have someone who can walk through and update the GS1 Digital Link based on the information about the expiration date, whatever it might be, It really does streamline not only the process itself, but ultimately can dramatically impact the labor cost and again, the waste that can be received based on how long that product itself is off the shelf or how they can move products faster through that process by being able to update that information in near real time. So it makes it much easier to, again, engage the consumer with the product information that they really need and want. So it can have huge impacts, not only at the point of sale, but before and after. Now, getting into, again, that circularity of the products and looking at some of the complexities that exist around the process, again, you can end up here on the right in that crawl, walk, run approach, where you can have nutrition information, ingredients, and flavors, and campaigns, and so forth, but you don't have to start there. You can start with something much simpler. We can start with just nutrition information, which, if you're familiar with the Smart Label program in the United States, it's already something that's available through QR codes in just about every product. That can be a simple starting point. And then you can evolve that into ingredients and then evolve into certain things around campaigns and what do I do with the sourcing, the details around it. Allergens is a big component, being able to tell quickly, is there an allergy around this? And being able to create that profile and that relationship with that consumer, especially on the food safety side. We talked about product recalls, being able to scan that product and have it immediately at the point of sale or even at home. Imagine the recall process that traditionally I go look for batch information. I've got to go to a website, go check out my local news station, et cetera, try to find the recall information. That can be very difficult. Whereas if I could just scan that barcode and it would instantly tell me if it's part of a recall or not, that is perfectly safe, that would make that process so much easier, really cut down on waste, frustration, and greatly improve that consumer relationship, ultimately building a better relationship over time. So the ability to, again, look at these dynamically and change them in terms of that experience, be able to update in real time. A lot of times it's important to be able to create the product packaging well in advance and be able to update that over time, because you may not necessarily know where that's going to end up or where to update the information to. So again, real-time updates to your platform based on that same product code that was already printed onto the packaging, we still update that later on to with whatever information may evolve as that product itself tells its own story. So looking at this from a similar example on the durable goods side. So again, looking at that pre-purchase, everybody's walked through the store, they picked up a product and they go to their phone, they look at reviews and such. But how you connect the dot between the product and the destination is often difficult. When you have a GS1 Digital Link on the package, it is your product in one hand, your information in the other. And so being able to connect the dots quickly, easily, and seamlessly with exactly what the consumer is looking for is massive from a customer satisfaction standpoint. And again, being able to evolve this over time with some durable goods, the circularity could be years or decades. So being able to connect back with product registration, warranty, recycle, resale of information. How do I validate if I am purchasing a durable good and I want to confirm authenticity? How can I connect the dots to be able to share that information in real time, accurately, consistently, and confidently each and every time that the consumer scans that particular product? And that 2D barcode, the GS1 Digital Link, can really live for the lifetime of that product. So again, whether it's lasting years or decades, that GS1 Digital Link spans that lifetime of that product from start to finish. So now that we've seen some examples, one of the first things we want to stop and look at is, okay, where do we begin? How do we actually start with this process, knowing that, and for some of our customers, there are thousands of products that they need to update. So how do we get started? One of the first things we recommend is let's get the team together. So we've all looked at our ecosystem. What is it who are all going to contribute to this? And the reality of this is the GS1 Digital Link program really touches everyone in an organization. It touches legal and finance, it touches marketing, it touches supply chain. Everybody can contribute and everybody wins in this process because everyone can benefit from that. But first thing to understand is what are some of the goals that we have from each of those teams? Where is it most important? Who has the biggest impact in the beginning? How do we prioritize those different use cases to know where to start? Then we want to sit down and look at our ecosystem, our partners and vendors, understanding how does GS1 help us in this flow to make sure we're following the right standards and guidelines to do it well and effectively. And then ultimately, it's about creating that plan to execute, again, in that crawl, walk, run approach so that we don't have to tackle everything in the beginning, but we can ease into it over time. So once you have your team together, so again, we're going to look at the product management side, quality assurance and food safety, if you're in a food creation company. So we have marketing, compliance, and legal. These are different teams that you might want to consider in this workflow and process to make sure that everyone has representation at the table when the time is right. Now, once you have the team together, then again, going back in and prioritizing their goals. So here's some examples of what the goal may be based on the department. We find that in some organizations, some departments are more invested than others. Often it starts with some of the printing and packaging side, the branding. Sometimes the process, as you look at the life cycle of how you create your packaging, some of our customers, the packaging is created 12 to 18 months in advance when the product actually goes live. So we're seeing customers that are making the decisions now on how to get started with product packaging today, knowing that the sunrise is until 2027, but they want to start and be ready. There's ways to trial this, to do different kind of micro views to make sure that they can ease into this process. They don't have to go back and reprint anything when the time comes. They can start today and have an impact, even if they don't know where they're going to end up in the future. There's still a process to get there. And so in terms of how do we get started in the easiest way possible, we start with the simple redirect. So in this case, again, having a simple redirection URL in that QR code that points to whatever that destination might be, having the redirect there gives you the flexibility to change that. So when you're looking at that QR code, if you've ever seen where you got a QR code and you scan it and it goes to a page that's not found, a lot of times that's a fixed URL that's in that QR code, where if they'd been doing a redirection service, they would be able to go in and update that and redirect it to a different destination. Sometimes it changes, sometimes it expires, sometimes when the campaign is over, et cetera. When you're using redirection, it allows you to update that at any point in time, even doing it dynamically, where you can have a different destination based on the language of their browser, based on the location of their device, based on the time of day or the day of week. So again, you can change that dynamically based on that outcome. So the point of sale still gets its G10 for scanning. It still can behave that way in an offline manner, but when the consumer scans it, they can have that personalized experience through that redirection service. And where do we point them? In this case, the second piece of this is the landing page. This could be existing page on your website. It could be your website itself, it could be product information. But the reality is you've got flexibility here. Every product has something that you would route them to. So it's a matter of connection, that redirection with that landing page. So they've got something of meaningful that, again, that can evolve over time because it is a web page at that point. Again, the point of sale, they have their experience for the checkout process, but this is the consumer scanning that QR code, just like they might do today. They're scanning a traditional web browsing QR code. In this case, the experience is the same for the consumer. They still land on the website, but you're able to control the information that they have and feed them what they need in that journey for that consumer. Now, as that evolves, the next piece gets into how do we improve the information over time? How can we look at our product database and dynamically change this based on that experience? And so now we get into the ability of creating dynamic web pages based on the information that we have available. So when I scan that particular G10, I may build that page in real time based on the ingredient information, the allergy information, where it was sourced from, what batch it was from, where was it manufactured, what is the information that really tells the story of that product, what the recycling information is. And again, as things do change and evolve, as restrictions and regulations evolve over time, you can always go back in and update this. So again, think about products that may have a package, let's say it's a plastic package that at some point there's new recycling components around that. You can always update that information in real time and feed that data to the landing page so that when it gets scanned, the consumer, again, has the best information right then and there based on what's happening at that exact moment. So it's critical in looking at the ecosystem, how does this evolve? And knowing that when you have access to all this data in real time, you can assemble that experience in real time as well. So in terms of how Blink brings the GS1 Digital Link to life, there are different components around this, but it's all designed to be simple and easy and to do it again at scale. So Blink has three key elements in our delivery process. We have our Blink Enterprise platform. So for 16 years, we've been creating branded short links and custom QR codes for our enterprise customers around the world to create these engagement moments. And so our core platform is really the basis for this foundation. And on top of that, we have our GS1 Digital Link Manager, which allows you to create the different templates to feed the different types of GS1 Digital Links, whether it's just a G10, you want to incorporate a batch number, or you want to serialize this and have a different link for a million different products. You can do all those things as well through the Digital Link Manager. And then lastly, our Blink CXP product, our customer experience platform, getting into that example of where we can assemble information in real time. So when somebody scans that QR code and pulls in that G10 information, we can do a real-time lookup and assemble that page, pulling in product details, care instructions, product registration, warranty, authenticity details, and really looking at the circularity of that entire product. So whether you have 10 products or 10,000, those can all be assembled in real time, allowing the experience to be done for each and every consumer in that real-time journey without having to build out all the information. We're doing it for you in that workflow, all through the automated systems and APIs. So a few different examples here. We've talked about, again, the resolver domain. So again, going back using your brand, having something unique, using a subdomain off of your core brand, that's going to boost your confidence and trust with the audience, knowing that it's authentic and information can be trusted. Using the G10 information, again, that base identification number that indicates that product. Looking at batch information around, in terms of if you're looking at your product sourcing, which batch does it come from? Serial numbers, if you're creating unique serialized products where you might have a different QR code for each and every one of those products. So if you're looking at, say, washing machines, each one of those could have a unique GS1 digital link with its own serial number that ties back to that particular product. Or if you're looking at food products where you have a best before date, wanting to include all information in real time in those digital links, all that can come together in that unique experience to create, again, that personalized page looking at packaging and expiry information, recycling details, et cetera. So being able to, again, create that end-to-end experience for that consumer really tells that story, and being able to pull all that data in real time makes it easy for everyone. So in terms of some of the capabilities of the platform, so looking at, again, building this out in a way where no coding is required, we can build a template and the structure where it fits the brand. And again, to me, the most important aspect of this is the real-time pull of data information. So being able to query your product information management system and come back and say, here's the product image, here's the ingredients, here's the sourcing details, here's where it was manufactured, here's the authenticity details, recycling information, and so forth, making sure that everything is compliant, and looking at how we enforce the sustainability components that every organization is really striving to do that. So doing those components quickly and easily at scale across the entire product ecosystem is really critical, especially when you're dealing with potentially tens of thousands of variations or millions of potential serialized products. So looking at the time to market, it's one of the things that's really critical about the process is, and although 2027 feels like it's so far away, it really is just around the corner, especially when you start backing up all the different pieces that are required, be it legal and compliance and finance and the product and packaging and printing, getting all the different pieces moving in that ecosystem, all those little sprockets fitting in just perfectly together. It's really being able to have a platform that can connect all those dots and feed into your existing systems and make sure that everything's working well together, ultimately delivering that ideal GS1 Digital Link experience that you can build on over time, going back to that crawl, walk, run. Again, we're easing into it, but we want to make sure we have something that we're building on, that foundation we can add to as we go. So there's lots of opportunities to improve the flow, getting the teams involved, make sure everybody is winning in the process, because ultimately, at the end of the day, this can be a win for the consumer, a win for the brand, win for everyone involved, and ultimately add tremendous value to the entire supply chain and ecosystem. So we're excited to be a part of that and assist our customers in really getting to market quickly with the GS1 Digital Link Sunrise 2027. So with that, we'll turn it over for questions and see how we can answer your questions today. Let's see, so looking at the first one here, the purpose of having a unique landing page or subdomain.
I can take a quick stab at that with what we're hearing and why that was something that came in. Now, again, one piece of this is, especially looking at like a crawl, walk, run, or your starting point, there is no need to make special content for this if you already have something that works. So if you've already put that effort to have your own mobile optimized landing page, you can just take what's in that QR code with the right data structure and link it to what exists. Where we see some benefits in a lot of brand owners looking at more of that long-term solution is around having more customized experiences. So if you're setting up a framework to have different experiences based on things like language, time of day, location, it can kind of clutter up your website. That might not be the experience a normal web browser is getting. And that's one of those things where you just need to assess what that experience should be over time. And then as you look to potentially build that out, leveraging those subdomains can be useful for the wider experience offering. Anything to add to that one, Andy?
No, I think I think you did a great job answering that. I think the only thing, looking at the flexibility when you have that resolver that sits on that subdomain, just giving that maximum flexibility in that overall flow, so you can have some different details incorporated into that. I think it's really helpful. Another question for you, Amber, that came in asking, what are retailers doing to prepare for the transition from the standard barcode to a 2D barcode?
A lot. So there's lots of activities taking place and kind of categorizing them. Part of it's really the assessment of what is it going to take for the hardware to do what it needs to do. So there's been a great momentum with the main hardware providers of scan equipment doing firmware updates, working with retailers and test and learn activities to make sure that the equipment in market is going to be able to scan these barcodes at the speed required, do some data translations to make it easier on the retailer's tech stack host system to leverage the data and make it as seamless as possible. So in terms of getting the data from the scanner, there's some work being done there to make sure, again, everything's smooth. You're not going to get double scans, speed's not impacted at all, and looking really great. There's also a lot of the questions around what do we want to do with this extra data as a retailer? So some retailers already have fields for things like serial numbers and expiration dates and act on those. Others don't. So they're going through some, cross-functional decision-making points of what data do we want to incorporate? How do we want to use that data? And what systems are going to be impacted as we roll out our version of this, similar to how brands are looking at when do I begin putting these on my packages and which way? Same things goes with retailers. And there's also a lot of retailers looking at their private label brands as part of this exercise as well. So lots of conversations, test and learn activities, and really nearing that completion of getting some things live in market in the coming, probably 6 months.
Thank you. Let's see. A question came in around. Let's see, where did it go here? Looking at doing essentially different sizes and configurations for different items. So if you have a QR code, or sorry, a product, but it has different variations to it, different dimensions, different weights, etc., can you create a serialized QR code so that every product has a unique code itself? So I would say the short answer to that is absolutely. We can definitely do that. So looking at that, it's really about within the GS1 standard, there is a component around that where you have as many different application identifiers to really define the metadata around that particular product. And so when it gets into the serialization and the unique printing of that, absolutely. So Blink works with different print providers, different workflow softwares around being able to create that unique QR code experience, that unique link. Each one of those is unique, and the QR code can be printed at scale and fit into that existing print workflow. So definitely a possibility. And from our perspective, every link would be unique and personalized because that creates, again, that maximum amount of experience with that product and that consumer. But ultimately, yes, definitely, if you have different products, there are different variations, and the more data, the better. Knowing that it doesn't have to be that way on day one, but we want to help you get you there.
Yeah, and one question I get asked a lot on the serialization piece is like, well, how many can I make? I have a lot of instances of this product. It's up to 20 alphanumeric characters, which is functionally infinite. We have not ran into any company at any point serializing where they've run out of serial number options. So good kind of thing to myth bust.
Excellent, very good. Another one here that came in is if you only have one link, sorry, only link to one place within their ecosystem, where would you recommend? So as an example, is it the brand homepage, a product specific page, product detail page, ingredients, etc.? If you could choose one location, where would that be?
I would pick a landing page that lets you navigate more places. So the one thing too, when you talk about nutrition and some of that, there may be requirements for your product type for digital disclosure information if it's not on your packaging. Put that there. That's kind of follow any kind of regulatory guidance you might have on that. But we see a lot of folks that don't really know the ideal place to start with. So they create a landing page that has a little bit of everything. And once you have that, if you have the analytics tracking set up, you can then see, okay, well, we're seeing people navigate to this more and begin to optimize that page just like you would with your normal website, not starting from a QR code.
Thank you. Let's see. Another question for you, Amber. What kind of data can be collected through the GS1 Digital Link, and how can you use it?
So there's different pieces of that. So there's what's encoded in the barcode that can be used for a lot of different things. So when you're talking about authentication, traceability, being able to, optimize returns management, and you're tracking things like the G10 and the serial number along the supply chain, you can do a lot with that. Because again, granular serialized identification, everything about that individual instance of a product. And really, it's kind of like your imagination and budget's the limit for a lot of folks I've talked to when you have that degree of identification. If talking about scanning a QR code, and this is not specific to GS1 Digital Link, this is just scanning a QR code in general from something on a billboard or a menu. If you've opted into it on your device, you can capture basic information about that user. Location was mentioned, preferences on language settings, things like that. And that'd be something great to touch base with your web and marketing teams to see what they might already be getting from some of that web traffic analytics or QR codes you might use in other parts of your business, because it'll directly translate to Digital Link.
And I would say on our side as well, when you're looking at that, the data that you can collect, a lot of it depends on how you're engaging with it automatically. So within our platform, as an example, we pull in things like their language, their device, their location, looking at some of the metadata details around the URL itself. But then because you're able to create that first-party data experience with them, you can begin building that relationship with the data that they choose to share with you. So as they share more with you and you build more trust with them, you can create that bigger data profile and then give them a better experience overall. So I feel that when you start looking at the relationship side of it, the data options really do increase, again, based on privacy laws and what that consumer chooses to share with you over time. Another question here, biggest challenges that brands are facing today as we begin to adopt the new standard. So I'll add my thoughts, and Amber, if there's anything that you think is missing, let me know. But honestly, from what we see, it's really where do we get started? There's so much to do, so many teams to get involved, all the different mechanics and logistics around it. That's honestly the biggest challenge is where do we get started? How do we begin? So for us, again, it's attending webinars like this where you're learning those different steps and who to get involved, what questions to ask, and where people are stumbling. So to me, that's really the first step is where do I start? Amber, what are your thoughts?
I have to give a +1 to that. What we definitely find is because there's so much potential and so many choices, and you're now talking about barcodes might have traditionally been owned by operations and supply chain folks, but now we're talking about ones with major marketing components. There's a lot of cross-functional goals that need to be met by one thing, and getting that alignment has been an interesting piece in terms of where to get started. And the best advice from the conversations I've had is pick where you can start, that crawl phase, get the benefits from that and work towards that other stuff over time. You don't need to do this overnight with everything.
Thank you. Makes perfect sense. In terms of the companies that are moving forward, Amber, from your experience, which industries or segments are moving the fastest, or which ones might be on the other end, which one might be struggling the most?
There's definite different aspects within the category, so there's not a one size fits all answer. So I'll kind of speak high level, knowing that there's some nuance to it. So with the apparel industry, they've already been leveraging RFID. They're from the go solutions really driving, hang tags that have a QR code with GS1 Digital Link serialized that matches the serialization in the RFID tag. And they've been able to pick that up a lot faster because they're already used to handling that data and doing things with it. There's a lot of drivers in the fresh food space for more data for freshness management, sustainability type of applications that are really driving those companies to move faster. And in the CPGs type of spaces, Smart Label was mentioned, a lot of companies that already have QR codes were like, yeah, we want to go ahead and just move to this, and we're going to add it into our normal packaging update, new product launch cycle of converting to what we have been doing to the digital link version, with the end game being at some point we can remove the 1D and we might get some value from these extra data points in there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Here's a question, a bit of a feature question. So looking at with global customer base, how do you make sure that the right content is served that's relevant to them based on their location? So one of the features inside of the Blink Enterprise platform is the ability to segment based on country, based on language, and even down, depending on where you are, down to province or state. So you really can have a single QR code that is scanned in different regions, different countries, by different languages, and engage with the right kind of content. So not just able to translate content on the same page, but ultimately actually route to different destinations. So one of our customers has QR codes on packaging, and they'll scan that, and that same package, the same QR code might go to 3 different countries, One of them might have an app, one of them might go to a web page, one of them might go to a VR experience. Um, so again, being able to segment that based on country, and even within some of those countries, knowing that some countries have multiple languages that are predominant, being able to segment even further can be really powerful to really, again, truly create that relationship with your consumer that really makes them feel special and unique in that experience, that surprise and delight, where it feels that it has been personalized to them.
And I want to just add one thing really quickly because we get asked about the global piece, but then we get a lot of brands that like, well, now that I really get thinking about it, my customer in New York versus Florida versus California might as well be in different countries and something, things. So even within the same country, again, that point, you can offer that up with the geolocation, going way more granular than just the country piece.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially with as in the United States, with different states starting to have their own privacy laws based on what they can do, being able to segment, whether you're in California, Utah, Texas, et cetera, being able to truly change that experience based on their location is can be paramount, even from a compliance standpoint. So,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, let's see, there's another one here for you, Amber. What is the I guess the most, phrase this properly, what are the questions that you're asked most? What's the kind of the number one or two question that you get hammered with on a daily basis?
The where do I get started? What resources are available? I think there's a lot of questions too from a lot of supply chain folks that have never really had to understand kind of the web elements of their business. So there's explaining a lot of questions to kind of the marketing folks and the web folks about the supply chain things and vice versa. I think we get a lot of questions about, who's doing what, because everybody wants to know a little bit what's happening, get ideas, share those, and we try to, do as much to share that information as, as we can share. Yeah, who's doing what? Where do I start? Um, Tends to always be like the top two we get.
Good. Um, this one is kind of a follow-on to earlier discussion around the serialization and that personalization experience. So they're talking about if you're creating a serialized number, can you match a person to a product? And the short answer is yes, with permission. So when you're serializing that QR code and having that digital link that speaks to that very specific number, when somebody scans that, really the question is, what does that experience look like? So where you ask them to register that product, have you as an organization registered that serial number to a household, as an example? So it really gets into what data you're collecting, what data you're asking, what relationship you're building, and how you're sharing that information. So at the end of the data exists in the ecosystem, but it's about the combination of connecting the dots between all those, as well as following those privacy laws that again allows you to engage with that customer over the lifecycle of that product, including as that product changes hands, if it goes through a resale process. If you have a product that has been resold and you recognize, oh, it's gone from A to B, being able to re-engage and start that circularity of that product over again, to me is part of that journey of that product and that relationship. Uh, let's see, anything else there you want to add, Amber?
No, I think you hit the key points. There's a lot of things companies are already doing with, consumer targeting. Again, this is a new mechanism and tool to add to your toolkit that might be able to supplement it. Noted that you might have some restrictions in that information. There's some brands and companies that use things like tokenization or verifiable credentials and other things too to help with that. But many, many times this is an extension of what you're already doing and what you've established is what you can collect and how you can match folks.
Absolutely. Let's do one more question. We'll let you wrap this up here for us, Amber. Do you think there'll be a big push to inform consumers about how to use 2D barcodes as we get closer to 2027?
So here's the kicker on this one. Several years ago, when this was all just ramping up and starting, everyone was concerned about what about self-checkout? What about consumers? Um, and then you see live implementations. Woolworths in Australia, one of their largest retailers, rolled it out. Didn't need to train anybody. They just did it. The barcodes are placed in similar places. It's the same type of process. It's a very natural thing. And in terms of the consumer engagement piece, especially post-COVID times, when you see a QR code, you recognize and know what to do with it. They're on kids' homework nowadays, right? The QR code will pop up a video and cereal boxes and billboards, and um, consumers recognize. They might not know what it's called. They might not know anything about it. Nobody knows who GS1 is, but people know that, hey, I just have to point my phone at this thing and it'll give me something. So the consumer piece, what we continue to learn and challenge and really test out is there's not that much to teach them. It's really a natural flow of behavior that was already started through other means. Again, especially with the increase of no touch in COVID, QR codes became everything in some markets, far, far more than we see in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the ongoing growth of digital product passport, and as that becomes more than just a European initiative, begins to grow globally, I think there'll be a common standard that people have an expectation that I can connect with my product to that digital product passport. And what we look at is, from our perspective, a QR code is an implied call to action. So you don't have to say, scan this. Everybody now knows, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
we know what to do. We pull out our phone instinctively and scan the QR code. So to your point, what's behind the QR code, that's a bit of a mystery as brands and marketers are learning to evolve and grow that. But from the consumer standpoint, I agree. At this point, I think we've all been trained pretty well that, again, that implied call to action, I know when I see it, I can scan it and do something with that. And as brands get smarter about how they really evolve their own part of the experience, it's really the GS1 Digital Link is the gateway to that really growth and engagement with the consumers. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Amber, thank you again so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. I look forward to doing it again with you soon. And thanks again for your time today. And thanks for everyone to join us. And we'll look forward to seeing you again on a future webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you.